Volcanoes, magma and mystery. Beneath the quiet surface of the earth, far below the roots of trees and the bones of mountains, there is a place where the world still breathes. Not with air, not with lungs, but with fire. Deep underground, where light cannot go and silence wraps the stone in sleep, magma stirs. It is not angry, not loud. It flows like thick honey through the cracks of ancient rock, warm and waiting. This is where volcanoes begin, not with explosions, but with a whisper. With a slow exhale of heat from the planet's core, like a memory rising through layers of forgotten time. You can almost imagine the Earth as a great sleeping body, its chest rising and falling ever so slightly. The crust we walk upon is like a thin skin, cracked in places, floating gently on the mantle beneath. And below that, the mantle itself is alive with movement. Hot, dense, soft rock flows there, slow as years, heavy as thought. Magma is not a pool. It is a current, a tide, a slow-motion wave curling through rock. It gathers quietly, collecting in chambers hidden far below, pressing gently against the stone, not yet ready to speak. But sometimes this breath becomes too strong. The pressure builds little by little like steam in a kettle. The rocks above begin to crack just slightly. They don't shout or split all at once. Instead, they creak, stretch, sigh. Through these tiny fractures, gases begin to escape, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, water vapor, rising like whispers through stone. These gases, invisible and ancient, are the first messengers of the volcano. They soften the rock, make space where there was none, tell the magma that its time is near. Still, nothing rushes. A volcano can wait for centuries. It may sleep longer than any civilization, longer than the tallest tree or the oldest tale. Some mountains you see today are only shells built long ago and hollow within. Others are just starting to breathe. And some, like those hidden beneath oceans, are building without anyone knowing. Volcanoes are not sudden. They are patient. Their stories are carved in millimeters per year, in temperatures held for 1,000 nights. The eruption, when it comes, is only the final sentence of a very long paragraph. Let's drift deeper into that paragraph. Imagine you're standing near a volcano that looks silent. The air is cool, the ground is firm, but under your feet something is waiting. Scientists use special instruments to listen to the ground, seismometers that feel tiny tremors, gas detectors that smell invisible breath. They're not listening for explosions. They're listening for rhythms, little quakes that say magma is moving, sounds that mean the earth is stretching. These tiny signs are like a heartbeat beneath stone. If you didn't know how to hear it, you'd think the mountain was asleep. In Iceland, where fire and ice meet, these breaths are often visible. You can walk across black sand plains where the ground steams through cracks. You can dip your fingers in hot springs warmed by the same magma that feeds distant volcanoes. Here, you learn something strange, that the Earth's breath isn't just destruction. It also gives warmth. Life in Iceland adapts to this heat, using it to grow food in greenhouses, to heat homes, to generate electricity. The volcano gives and takes, both destroyer and nurturer. But what is magma really? It is melted rock, yes, but not just one kind. It carries pieces of the deep earth in its flow, crystals formed under pressure, gases from ancient oceans, even fragments of once living things turned to stone. As it moves, it changes. It cools slightly. It mixes with other rocks. It becomes thicker or thinner. Its journey is never straight. It curves and loops and folds upon itself like a thought forming in the dark. This is why no two volcanoes are the same. Each has a different breath, a different voice, a different path to the surface. Sometimes magma never reaches the top. It cools underground, hardening into granite, diorite, gabbro, rocks you can find in mountain cores, silent records of eruptions that never came. Other times it rises all the way but flows gently, like syrup down a hill, building wide, sloping shield volcanoes. And sometimes it traps too much gas and bursts upward in a violent exhale, throwing ash into the sky and carving craters in the land. Even these differences are part of the breath, the inhale, the hold, the exhale. The breath beneath the earth is not something we can see directly, but we feel it, in earthquakes, in hot springs, in the shape of the land. And when a volcano finally erupts, we're reminded the Earth is not a rock, it is not dead, it is not still, it is breathing always. And that breath is older than any creature, any forest, any sea. It has been breathing since the beginning, and it will keep breathing long after we are gone. So when you stand near a volcano, whether it's sleeping or speaking, remember this. Beneath your feet, the world is not silent. It is only deep in thought. Let's drift deeper now into the quiet heart of magma's journey, into the warm corridors where stone turns soft and memories of fire live on. When we speak of volcanoes, we often imagine the moment of eruption, lava spewing, ash rising, thunder underfoot. But this is only a flicker in a much longer tale. Most of a volcano's life is spent preparing, thinking, changing in the dark. And in those dark places, magma is not just moving, it is transforming. It absorbs the story of the earth, layer by layer, pressure by pressure, whisper by whisper. The mantle where magma is born is not liquid the way water is. It is rock that flows very slowly, like wax warmed in a hand, soft enough to shift but firm enough to resist. And in this mantle, heat rises from the core like a dream rising from sleep. That heat is not random. It moves in vast, looping currents, convection cells that rise and fall over millions of years. These cells carry heat upward toward the crust, where it begins to soften solid rock into something new. And this something becomes magma, waiting in silence. The path magma takes is shaped by countless things, by the kind of rock it melts, by the gases it traps, by the strength of the crust above. As it rises, it pushes into pockets and folds, widening cracks, forming chambers. These magma chambers are not lakes or caverns you could walk through. They are zones where heat and pressure make the rock behave in strange, half-solid ways. Think of them as breathing rooms where magma collects its thoughts, gathers energy, changes its shape. Here, crystals begin to form and float. Gases build and bubble. The magma becomes thicker or thinner, richer in silica or iron, depending on where it's been and where it's going. One of the most beautiful ideas in geology is that rocks remember. When magma cools and hardens, it freezes the story of its journey into texture and color. The patterns of crystals, the bubbles left by gases, the layers of ash and pumice, they are all memory. A cooled lava flow is not just a rock. It's a diary written in mineral ink. If you hold a piece of basalt or obsidian, you're holding a moment when Earth exhaled. That moment may have lasted a day, or a minute, or an instant. But it is captured forever in stone. Now imagine the Earth as a painter and magma as its brush. Across the ages, volcanoes have shaped the land into art. They've built mountains where there were none. They've painted islands in the sea layer by layer, eruption by eruption. Hawaii, Iceland, the Galapagos, these are places born entirely from volcanic breath. Each layer of lava builds upon the last, rising slowly from the ocean floor until a peak breaks the surface and becomes a home for birds, for plants, for people. Without volcanoes, most of the land we know would not exist. But volcanoes also erase. When the pressure inside becomes too much, when the gases no longer find escape, when the crust cannot hold back the tide, then comes the eruption. It is not rage, it is not punishment, it is release. The Earth is letting go of heat, of weight, of stories too long contained. Ash clouds rise and darken the sky, not to frighten us, but to carry minerals to distant fields. Lava spreads across the ground, not to burn all it touches, but to begin again. In this cycle of destruction and rebirth, volcanoes are gardeners in disguise. Some plants only grow in volcanic soil. It is rich in nutrients, full of the very minerals that life needs to thrive. In Java, in Costa Rica, and Ethiopia, fields stretch green and full beside steaming craters. Farmers plant crops in the shadow of sleeping giants, knowing that their soil is a gift from fire. Even in places where lava flows have cooled only recently, small seeds take root. First mosses, then grasses, then forests. The ash becomes food. The heat becomes shelter. Life does not fear volcanoes, it waits for them. And what of us, the people who live near volcanoes? Across the world, from Naples to Tokyo, from Mexico City to Auckland, millions of people live close to these breathing giants. Not because they forget the danger, but because they feel the presence. Volcanoes offer beauty, mystery, connection. Their slopes are sacred in many cultures. Some believe gods sleep within. Others build temples on their flanks as if to whisper prayers into the earth's ear. Volcanoes remind us of how small we are and how connected. Scientists today study volcanoes not just to predict eruptions, but to understand the deep earth. They send drones into craters, drill into cooled flows, measure gas with satellites. Every discovery is a new sentence in the Earth's autobiography. And sometimes when magma moves in secret places, like under Antarctica or the sea floor, it tells us things we never expected. That continents drift, pulled by currents in the mantle. That oceans are born and broken by volcanic ridges. That our planet is not a stone but a song, sung in fire and cooled in time. Still, for all we know, volcanoes keep their greatest mystery. We cannot see where magma first stirs. We cannot stop it or summon it. We can only listen, feel, learn. A volcano is a doorway not just to the planet's inner fire but to our own deep curiosity. It invites us to wonder, to imagine the unseen, to respect the silence, to read the stones. So when the volcano sleeps and the wind moves quietly through its ash-covered trees, listen. You might hear more than silence. You might hear the breath of the world, waiting to speak again. Now let us descend one final time into the warmth of the Earth's memory, where the last thoughts of a volcano gather before they become stone. This is not the end of the story, but the part where it slows to a whisper, where everything that moved and burned now begins to cool and settle. After an eruption, after the roar and flow and cloud, something strange and beautiful happens: stillness. The lava crusts over into blackened fields. The ash drifts like snowfall across valleys and rooftops. The air smells of minerals and silence. It is here in this pause that a volcano breathes out its last long sigh. The land left behind by volcanoes is not empty. It is soft with beginnings. Even as smoke fades from the crater, life begins to stir. Insects crawl across warm rock. Ferns unfold from ash. Rain falls and turns soot to soil. Birds return to perch on hardened lava. Some of the earliest flowers to bloom in volcanic fields are small and yellow, like stars spilled from the sky. They do not wait for decades. They arrive as soon as they can, as if drawn by the heat still rising from beneath the ground. These pioneers mark the first chapter of rebirth, not in thunder, but in tiny, silent petals. Geologists call this process primary succession, a slow, delicate rebuilding of an ecosystem where none existed. But poets might call it healing. The earth, having exhaled so much energy, now inhales calm. Over time, grasses take root. Trees grow crookedly from cracks in lava. Eventually, animals return. They do not fear the past. They walk over it, build on it, call it home. Every footprint on cooled lava is a mark of forgiveness, a promise that life does not give up. And what of the volcano itself? It rests. Its chambers empty, its pressure released, it becomes a mountain again. Some volcanoes stay quiet for hundreds, even thousands of years. Others whisper more often, but all volcanoes enter these long silences. And in those silences, we come close to them. We hike their slopes. We build homes near their feet. We name them Fuji, Etna, Mauna Loa, Tal, as if naming might make them gentler. But the truth is, they were never cruel. They are just old and deep and full of breath. There is something deeply human about volcanoes. We, too, build pressure inside. We carry heat we don't show, thoughts we don't speak, feelings we don't release. And sometimes when the weight becomes too much, we erupt. We shout, we cry, we let go, not to destroy but to clear space for something new. Like magma becoming soil, our strongest emotions can become seeds if given time. In this way, volcanoes are more than geology. They are metaphors, slow and glowing, teaching us how to transform. Now think of all the places where volcanoes live unseen. Beneath the ocean, in darkness deeper than light has ever reached, new islands are born. Magma spills out along mid-ocean ridges, cools into pillow-shaped rocks and builds the floor of the sea. No one watches, but the earth continues. In Antarctica, buried under kilometers of ice, volcanoes sleep in frozen silence. On distant moons like Io and Enceladus, volcanoes burst through crusts of sulfur and ice, not with fire but with water, with chemicals, with mysteries we barely understand. Volcanism is not just an earthly breath, it is cosmic. It is part of how planets live and evolve. Even our own moon carries scars of old eruptions, ancient lava plains now called Maria, the seas of the moon. We once thought they were oceans, painted in poetry. Now we know they are frozen waves of basalt, the breath of a young moon caught in time. Look up at the night sky, and you're looking at a record of volcanoes older than memory. And yet in all this heat, all this fire, there is always stillness at the center, the crater after eruption, the cooled lava after flow, the quiet ring of mountains after the sky darkens and clears. This is what makes volcanoes so strange. They hold both chaos and calm, eruption and peace. They are not one thing. They are a cycle, like the turning of seasons, like the heartbeat of the world. When we teach children about volcanoes, we show them red lava and erupting cones. But perhaps we should also show them the silence, the warmth underfoot, the flowers blooming in ash. Because the most important part of a volcano's story is not how it explodes, but how it breathes. How it changes the land not just by tearing it apart, but by giving it shape, giving it color, giving it life. So the next time you see a volcano in a photo or a painting or through the window of a plane, pause. Let your thoughts move slowly like magma under stone. Remember that beneath your feet and beneath the sea and beneath the moon, the world is always shifting. It does not sleep. It breathes. It remembers. It becomes. And in that becoming, in that quiet, glowing transformation is a kind of grace, a softness beneath stone, a fire that does not burn but builds. This is the breath beneath the earth, and it never truly ends. In the stillness of a mountain, it's hard to believe anything could melt. The peak seems solid, unmoving, carved by time into ancient shapes. But even the strongest stone has a secret. It was once liquid. Once long ago, even these towering mountains melted from within. Not quickly, not loudly, but with slow heat rising from the belly of the earth. This is the story of transformation, of how something as permanent as a mountain can begin as fire, can flow like syrup, and then harden into memory. Beneath every mountain is a record of change. What we see above ground, the sharp ridges, the folded layers, the glint of minerals in the sun, these are the final forms. But deep below, the journey begins where rock is not yet rock, where heat presses against stone until it bends. The Earth's crust floats on a layer that behaves like neither solid nor liquid, but something in between. It moves, shifts, churns, and in certain places, it warms just enough to create something extraordinary: magma. This is not just molten rock, it is potential. Magma is the beginning of mountains and the end of others. Mountains melt from within when they are part of the great engine of plate tectonics. At the edges of continents and beneath ocean floors, vast slabs of crust slide beneath one another. Where they meet, at subduction zones, one plate is forced deep into the mantle. As it sinks, it carries water, minerals, and even fragments of ancient seabed down with it. This water lowers the melting point of the surrounding rock, making it easier for magma to form. What follows is a slow alchemy. Solid turns to soft, heavy becomes hot, and from this hidden crucible, new rock begins to rise. Imagine a piece of crust sinking for millions of years, inch by inch, deeper into the Earth's warm interior. It doesn't melt all at once. It dehydrates first, releasing water into the mantle above. That water seeps into the hot rock and says, "Melt." And so pockets of magma form, not huge lakes but small pools, scattered and deep. These pockets rise, drawn upward by their heat and lightness. Some never make it to the surface. They cool underground, forming the roots of mountains we may never see. Others push further, slower, upward, shaping the land in secret. As magma moves, it gathers parts of the world around it. Bits of old crust melt into it. Minerals dissolve and change. Gases bubble and join the flow. Magma is not pure. It is mixed, stirred, flavored by the path it takes. And as it cools, its minerals begin to separate like sugar crystallizing in warm tea. Some of these minerals are common, feldspar, quartz, mica. Others are rare, garnet, zircon, gold. Each tells a different story about where the magma came from and how long it stayed underground. Eventually, some magma reaches the surface, forming volcanoes, but other magma stays trapped beneath the crust. There it cools slowly, very slowly, over tens of thousands of years. The slower it cools, the larger the crystals that form. These become rocks like granite, speckled and strong, forming the cores of mountains. Over time, as erosion wears down the surface, these hidden roots are revealed. What once was magma becomes the heart of a range, the spine of a continent. Think of the Himalayas, the Andes, the Cascades. Each holds magma in its history. The Himalayas were born not of volcanic eruption, but of collision, India pushing into Asia with such force that the crust crumpled upward like cloth. But even here there is heat below. Even here rocks melt in hidden chambers. The Andes, by contrast, are a volcanic range, formed by subduction and fire. Their peaks are dotted with craters and cones, each a monument to the Earth's inner warmth. Mountains are often seen as permanent, unchanging, but they are not. They are caught in a slow dance, rising and falling, melting and hardening, growing and shrinking. A mountain may take millions of years to form and yet be gone in less. It may rise from the sea as magma, stand tall for ages, and then erode back into dust. Its life is long, but not forever. And in every stage of that life, it remembers the heat that shaped it. Even the rocks beneath your feet carry this memory. If you find a chunk of granite and hold it in your hand, you're holding what was once deep magma. Smooth it with your thumb. See the glint of crystal. That sparkle is time cooled slowly. That texture is pressure shaped silently. That weight is history risen from below. Every mountain you've ever seen, every ridge, every cliff, every boulder, is part of this endless journey of melting, rising, hardening, and returning. In this way, mountains are like thoughts that take form. They begin in silence, deep within, shaped by pressure no one sees. They rise slowly over time until they show themselves to the world. They stand for a while, strong and sharp, and then they begin to soften, to return to the place they came from. But in their rise and fall, they change everything around them: rivers, winds, ecosystems, lives. They are not just scenery, they are storytellers. So the next time you look at a mountain and think it is cold and still, remember what it holds inside. Remember that once long ago it melted from within, that beneath its surface even now warmth stirs, not to destroy, not to frighten, but to remind us that everything strong was once soft, everything high was once low, everything we see began in the unseen. And somewhere deep below, another mountain is beginning, slowly, quietly, in the warmth of the Earth's heart. Let's drift deeper into the slow pulse of stone, into the chambers where time does not tick but flows. When we think of mountains melting from within, we often imagine sudden eruptions, lava pouring down slopes. But beneath that image is a gentler truth. Melting is not always violent. Much of the Earth's transformation happens quietly, in slow-moving rivers of warmth beneath our feet. These rivers, these veins of magma, don't always rise to burst through the surface. Often they pause midway, suspended in the crust like a thought not yet spoken. And there, in those shadowed spaces, they begin to change everything around them. Imagine the crust of the Earth not as solid ground, but as a fragile skin, only a few tens of kilometers thick, floating on a mantle of slow fire. The crust bends, it cracks, and through those cracks magma seeps in. It pushes aside layers of rock, squeezes between them, melts their edges. This is called intrusion, when magma enters existing rock without breaking through to the sky. It cools slowly, creating sheets and blobs of hardened stone called sills, dikes, laccoliths. These become the hidden bones of landscapes we may never see from the surface. Over millions of years, erosion strips away the outer layers of the Earth, revealing these frozen intrusions. What once was magma, creeping silently underground, is now a granite peak or a rugged outcrop standing in the wind. Some of the world's most iconic landforms were born this way: Yosemite's Half Dome, South Africa's Drakensberg, Scotland's Cuillin Hills. They are the cooled hearts of ancient fire, the solid remains of what once flowed unseen. But it is not just rock that changes. When magma moves through the crust, it also brings heat, and that heat transforms the world around it. Rocks near the intrusion are baked, their minerals restructured. This is contact metamorphism, a quiet kind of cooking where limestone becomes marble, shale becomes hornfels, and the chemistry of the land is rewritten without a sound. This reshaping leaves behind rings of altered stone, like scars glowing faintly under the skin of the earth. Geologists read these scars to trace the path of magma, to map the breadth of a mountain from within. Heat also stirs water. Deep underground, groundwater warms as it touches magma or hot rock. It begins to move, carrying dissolved minerals with it. This water seeps through cracks, through pores, through grain by grain of stone. Over time, as it cools again, the minerals are left behind, crystals growing in open spaces, metals collecting in veins. This is how the earth hides treasures: gold, copper, silver, quartz, born not in violence but in warmth and waiting, in places where magma once passed by. These mineral-rich veins are often discovered in mountainous regions where uplift and erosion have peeled back the surface like pages of an old book. The Andes are laced with copper, the Rockies sparkle with silver, the Himalayas hide garnets and rubies. These riches, drawn from melted mountains, have shaped human history, sparking migrations, settlements, even wars. And yet they were never meant for us. They were quiet accidents of geology, made by time and temperature and the slow dance of water and stone. Still, not all melted rock becomes treasure. Some becomes memory. Take the metamorphic rocks found in the heart of ancient mountain ranges. These rocks have been so deeply buried and so intensely heated that they no longer remember what they once were. Their minerals have changed. Their layers have twisted. Their colors have deepened. They are like stories rewritten in a different tongue. And in them, geologists find clues to mountains long vanished, ranges that rose and fell before dinosaurs, before forests, before even complex life. These are the ghosts of ancient collisions, their roots preserved in stone that once melted, rose, and froze again. Now imagine what it feels like to be near such rock. Touch a boulder that was once deep in the earth's belly. Feel its roughness, its weight. Know that it cooled in silence over centuries beneath layers of mountain that no longer exist. The air around it is fresh, but the rock is old, hundreds of millions of years old. It has seen oceans come and go. It has felt glaciers scrape its face. And yet it endures, a witness to time's slow fire. Magma doesn't always need to erupt to make a mark. Its slow, steady movement reshapes the world from within. Mountains are not just the result of uplift and collision, they are also the product of melting and flow. And because of this, no two are alike. Each range has its own rhythm. Some rise sharp and fast, with volcanic cones that spit ash and lava. Others swell quietly, their roots fed by magma that never reaches the light. Some hide their fire so deeply that only seismic waves or magnetic patterns reveal their warmth. We often think of Earth's inner fire as something threatening, but it is also creative. Without it, there would be no continents, no minerals, no topography. The Earth would be flat and lifeless. Fire gives it depth, texture, beauty. Mountains melt from within not to disappear, but to begin anew. They shed their forms and take on new ones over and over like clay in the hands of time. There is comfort in knowing that even stone changes. Even the strongest parts of the world have melted and flowed and hardened again. And through those cycles, they have become more complex, more beautiful, more alive. So when you look at a mountain, know this. You are looking at something that was once molten, something that traveled through darkness, something that changed everything it touched, and something that, even now, holds a quiet warmth in its bones. This is how mountains melt, not in rage but in rhythm, not in chaos but in care. The earth does not rush. It warms, it waits, it moves from the inside out slowly, surely, always. Let us return now to the cooling edges of this journey, where the story of melted mountains comes to a quiet close, not with a roar but with the soft hush of solid stone. When the fire has passed, when the magma has cooled, when the shifting has slowed, what remains is not just a mountain. What remains is a monument to time. Every ridge, every folded layer, every vein of quartz in the rock is a record of what the earth once felt deep within. And though we cannot always see it, the memory of heat lingers in every stone. In the highlands of old ranges, where erosion has stripped away the surface, the hidden cores of ancient volcanoes are now exposed to sky. These cores, once fiery conduits for rising magma, are now the peaks we hike, the cliffs we climb, the boulders we rest upon. Their jagged shapes are not just the result of weather and wind, but of fire frozen in place. And their presence reminds us that even in stillness, even in what seems final, there is a story still being told. As water and wind continue to sculpt the face of the earth, mountains soften. They become gentler, rounder. Trees take root in their cracks. Moss blankets their flanks. Animals make homes in their shadow. Over time, even the grandest peaks become hills, then valleys, then plains. Yet the heat that built them, the melt from within, does not vanish. It flows onward beneath other mountains, rising again in places we cannot yet name. The earth recycles its fire, over and over, shaping new ranges from the bones of the old. Sometimes these processes reveal unexpected beauty. In places where magma cooled slowly and perfectly, crystals formed deep within the rock: amethyst, topaz, tourmaline, gems shaped in darkness and pressure. In other places, entire caves of glittering minerals were left behind when volcanic gases bubbled through lava and vanished. These spaces, hollow and gleaming, are like the breath of the mountain made visible. They are not common. They are gifts. And when found, they offer a glimpse into the patience of geologic time. Mountains also influence the world around them long after their heat fades. They redirect rivers. They change climate. They cast rain shadows that create deserts on one side and forests on the other. They become homes to unique species, plants and animals that live only at certain elevations in certain soils with certain histories. These ecosystems, born of elevation and isolation, are part of the mountain's legacy. Without fire, there would be no mountain. Without mountain, no alpine flower. No snow leopard. No eagle gliding on wind currents carved by ancient stone. In the human world, mountains have long held meaning beyond their mass. We look to them for guidance, for symbolism, for peace. Some cultures see them as gods, others as gateways to the divine. Pilgrims climb their slopes not to conquer but to listen, to feel small, to remember something older than cities or nations. Even in modern times, we build observatories on mountain tops, seeking stars with instruments rooted in rock that once flowed. Our search for the cosmos is grounded in magma, cooled into platforms that lift us toward the sky. But perhaps what mountains offer most is a kind of quiet wisdom. They remind us that strength is not constant, it is earned through change. That hardness comes from heat and pressure, endured with stillness. That even the tallest heights come from deep, hidden beginnings. When we feel lost or small or uncertain, we can look to the mountain and remember, it too was once formless. It too took time to rise. It too melted from within before it became what it is now. And somewhere beneath the surface, the cycle is beginning again. Plates are shifting, crust is diving, rock is warming, magma is stirring. A new mountain is being born, though we may never see it in our lifetime. Perhaps our children's children will, or perhaps no one will. But that doesn't matter. The earth is not in a hurry. It makes mountains the way it makes stars, in silence, in darkness, in deep time. So the next time you see a mountain, know that you are seeing not just stone, but story. Not just a peak, but a process. Not just the present, but the memory of fire. And beneath it all, deep below your feet, the earth is still melting, still moving, still becoming. This is how mountains melt from within, not once, but always. And in that endless melting, in that endless becoming, the world is shaped. There is a kind of dust that doesn't fall, it rises. Not from the ground, but from the heart of the earth, carried skyward by forces older than any storm. This is volcanic ash. It is not the soft gray powder left by firewood, nor the feathery dust of forgotten books. It is something entirely different, sharp, glassy, ancient. It bursts into the air during an eruption, floating high above mountains and clouds, a memory of magma, shattered and set free. And though it may fall gently, like snow, its story begins in heat and pressure so immense that rock is torn apart and thrown into the sky. Ash is born when magma meets water or air or sudden release. Imagine molten rock, glowing red, filled with gas and heat. As it races upward through the volcano's throat, the pressure drops. Gases that were once dissolved like bubbles in a sealed soda now burst forth, expanding violently. The magma shatters not into lava flows but into tiny fragments, dust-sized pieces of once melted rock. These particles are sharp, irregular, sometimes so fine they remain suspended in the atmosphere for weeks. What was deep inside the earth now drifts in sunlight, carried by winds across continents. This ash is not just debris. It is memory. Each particle carries a record of its birth, the minerals it held, the gases it released, the temperature it endured. Under a microscope, a single grain of volcanic ash might appear like a jagged shard of glass or a porous bubble frozen in time. These grains fall from the sky in great clouds, coating the land in layers that geologists will one day read like pages in a book. In places like Iceland, Japan, and Indonesia, the soil itself contains centuries of ash, stacked quietly beneath our feet. When ash first falls, it seems soft and quiet. It floats down in silence, blanketing rooftops, trees, and roads in a uniform gray. But beneath that quietness is a kind of weight. Ash is abrasive, heavy, and difficult to breathe. It clogs engines, contaminates water, and collapses buildings when too much accumulates. Yet even as it disrupts, it also preserves. Buried beneath volcanic ash, entire cities have been frozen in time. Pompeii, for example, lay hidden for nearly 2,000 years beneath the fine layers of ash from Mount Vesuvius. Bodies, rooms, paintings, preserved not by ice or stone, but by the sky's own falling memory. Ash remembers not just places, but moments. It tells us when the volcano breathed last and how strongly. Layers of ash in ice cores from Antarctica and Greenland help scientists count back the years, each layer a signature from a distant eruption. The 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora left ash that cooled the entire planet, causing what became known as the year without a summer. Crops failed. Frost bit in June, and all from a mountain in Indonesia, whispering its story into the skies. That ash still lies in soil across the globe, still silently telling its tale. There are even traces of volcanic ash in our bodies. Over time, winds carry ash into the oceans where it settles and sinks. Marine life feeds on the nutrients it brings. These tiny creatures, when eaten by larger ones, pass those minerals up the food chain. In this way, the remnants of an eruption, born in fire, risen through sky, fallen into sea, become part of us. The iron in our blood, the calcium in our bones, may once have been locked in rock beneath a volcano. We carry the sky's memory in our very cells. In the highlands of Hawaii, you can walk through forests that once were bare ash fields. The soil is now rich, full of life. Ferns grow in layers once scalded by heat. Birds nest where only silence lived. Ash, when left alone, becomes the beginning of something new. It absorbs rain. It binds with roots. It becomes home. This is the secret nature of volcanic ash. It is both an ending and a beginning, both a record and a seed. And as it falls, it touches everything equally. The rich and the poor, the young and the old, forests and cities, mountains and seas. In a matter of hours, an entire landscape can be transformed, not by fire or flood, but by dust. And yet there is something beautiful in that transformation. Ash smooths edges. It silences noise. It wraps the world in stillness like a snowfall without cold. For a moment, the earth pauses. And in that pause, we are reminded of how small we are, how temporary, and how deeply connected. Ash does not stay long in the sky. Gravity calls it back. But even as it falls, it whispers its story to the wind. Plains must reroute. Sunsets turn blood red. Clouds shift and shimmer with the breath of stone. From high above, satellites watch as the ash drifts, mapping it, measuring it, learning from it. Scientists study the height of the plume, the size of its particles, the wind's direction. But even with all our tools, we cannot stop it. We can only listen and prepare. Because somewhere, even now, a volcano is preparing to speak again. Deep below, magma is rising, pressure is building, the mountain is waiting, and when it breathes, it will send its memory skyward, not in anger, but in release. And once again, ash will rise, it will drift, it will fall. and the sky will remember. Now let us walk among the layers ash leaves behind, not just as dust upon the ground, but as a slow unfolding of stories buried and reborn. When ash falls from the sky, it does not simply vanish into the wind. It rests. It waits. It settles into the folds of the earth and begins to become part of everything that follows. Each layer of volcanic ash is like a single breath held in stone, a moment of heat and light captured in cool silence. Over time, these layers build up, a quiet stack of memories that geologists call tephra. They do not shift or whisper. They sit still, holding time in place. In places like New Zealand, where volcanoes have shaped the land for thousands of years, the soil itself is a record of eruptions. Farmers till fields made from ancient ash. Children play on hills that were once covered in falling dust. And below every layer of green grass is a stripe of gray, a fossil of the sky's exhale. Scientists dig into these layers not to find bones, but to find moments. Eruptions from 800 years ago, 5,000 years ago, even longer. They date each one by the materials inside. Small crystals of feldspar, fragments of obsidian, even glassy shards no wider than a hair. These materials carry chemical fingerprints that tell which volcano they came from and when. But ash layers are more than clocks. They are windows. Each one reveals what the world looked like at that moment in time. A layer of thick, heavy ash might tell of a sudden, violent eruption. A thin, light layer might come from a faraway volcano, its dust carried by jet streams across oceans. Some ash layers contain pollen, charcoal, or tiny shells, evidence of what grew, burned, or lived nearby. In this way, ash does not just remember itself. It remembers everything it touched, and everything that touched it. Consider the way ash interacts with life. After a major eruption, the first instinct may be to flee, to escape the falling dust, the thickened air, the weight on roofs and leaves. But once the ash has landed, something curious begins. It breaks down slowly, mixing with soil. It adds minerals like phosphorus and potassium, essential for plant growth. It changes the texture of the ground, helping it retain water. It softens under rain, crumbles into grains, and becomes something life can hold. In Iceland and Indonesia, where eruptions are frequent, farmers return to ash-covered fields within weeks. They do not just endure the ash, they rely on it. Ash also protects. In Japan, archaeologists have discovered entire ancient villages buried by eruptions, preserved in remarkable detail. Tools, pots, footprints, all held in place by layers of cooled dust. These findings tell stories that written records never could: what people wore, what they ate, how they lived. In this way, ash is not just destructive. It is gentle in its own strange way. It buries, yes, but it also keeps. It hides, but it does not forget. The presence of ash in unexpected places often reveals more than its absence ever could. In Greenland, for example, thin bands of volcanic ash are found deep within the ice sheet. These came from eruptions in Alaska or Russia, carried by the high winds of the upper atmosphere. Each layer in the ice, like each layer in the soil, marks a moment of silence after fire. Together, these layers are a library of the Earth's breath, page after page of ash, sealed in snow. And what of the creatures who live near volcanoes? Ash touches them too. Birds learn to fly through hazy skis. Insects burrow beneath it. Mammals sniff at its scent, tasting sulfur and thyme. Some animals flee when they sense an eruption coming, perhaps through smell, perhaps through subtle vibrations. Others return quickly, finding shelter in the altered landscape. Over time, entire species adapt to ash-rich environments. Plants grow with tougher leaves. Animals develop lungs better suited to dusty air. In this way, ash does not just record history, it writes it. Ash also moves us. The word itself carries weight in our stories, our poems, our rituals. We scatter the ashes of loved ones. We say things are reduced to ashes when they end. And yet we speak of rising from the ashes when something begins again. There is something deeply human in this cycle of burning, falling, and becoming new. Volcanic ash captures this truth in its very form. It begins as heat, it falls as dust, and then it nourishes life. It is not an end, it is a transformation. Even the sky changes when ash is in the air. During and after major eruptions, sunsets turn brilliant shades of red and orange. The fine particles scatter sunlight differently, casting halos around the sun and moon. Artists from centuries ago painted these skies without knowing their cause. Only now do scientists match the timing of those paintings with ash events around the world. A painting of a strange, glowing sky in 1816. That was Tambora. A blood-red twilight in 1884. That was Krakatoa. In this way, ash leaves fingerprints not just on soil, but on memory, on art, on culture. And still it falls, slowly, gently. Even now, above some ocean or mountain, ash is drifting down. It may settle unnoticed on a glacier. It may fall into a rainforest canopy. It may sink into the sea to be swallowed by plankton and cycled into the heart of a fish. Or it may rest on a windowsill, gray and fine, a soft sign that somewhere far away, the earth has spoken again. Ash teaches us that even destruction can be gentle. That memory can fall from the sky and blanket the world in silence. That something broken can become something whole. And that the sky, even when darkened, is never truly empty. It is filled with the breath of the earth, falling softly, resting lightly, remembering everything. Now let us return to where the ash settles, on rooftops, on forests, on the still surfaces of lakes, and where its story gently closes, not with silence but with transformation. After an eruption, after the clouds have drifted and the sky clears again, the ash remains. Not forever in the air, but forever in the land, in the water, in the memory of those who saw it fall. And though it may seem that everything ends in that grayness, something quieter begins. Because ash in its stillness begins to change the world, not with speed, not with force, but with time. As ash layers build up, they become more than dust, they become soil. Soil born not from decay, but from fire. And this soil becomes rich slowly, patiently. Rain softens it. Sun warms it. Tiny roots reach down through it, finding minerals that would not exist without that volcanic breath. In places like the Andes and the Hawaiian Islands, some of the world's most fertile soils are made from long-cooled ash. Coffee, tea, rice, and flowers, lush and abundant, grow where the earth once exhaled its deepest heat. And as each harvest is gathered, a piece of the volcano lives on. Yet even as ash gives life, it also protects what has already passed. In archaeological sites across the globe, entire worlds have been preserved beneath layers of ash. In El Salvador, a village called Seren lies frozen in time, pots still on stoves, footprints still pressed into floors, buried beneath ash from a long-ago eruption. Unlike other ancient ruins destroyed by war or water or wind, these were not erased. They were wrapped in ash and remembered, sealed from decay. They waited until someone listened again, and when uncovered, they spoke. Volcanic ash also plays a role in the planet's balance. When large eruptions occur, enough ash and sulfur gases can rise into the stratosphere to reflect sunlight away from Earth. This can cause the planet to cool, ever so slightly, for a year or more. In 1991, Mount Pinatubo erupted in the Philippines and caused global temperatures to drop nearly half a degree Celsius. These small shifts may seem unnoticeable day to day, but over time they ripple through ecosystems, weather patterns, even economies. The ash that falls is not just local, it is global. It reminds us how closely everything is connected. And there is another kind of memory ash holds, one we can't always see. In the oceans, ash particles settle slowly onto the seafloor, building soft layers that hold the story of the Earth's past climates. These sediments, studied by marine geologists, offer a record of what the atmosphere once held, how the winds once moved, what the oceans once carried. In this way, the sky's dust becomes the ocean's diary. It writes not in words, but in layers, silent and steady. And scientists read these pages not with eyes alone, but with patience, with instruments, with care. So many things in the natural world pass quickly, a leaf in wind, a ripple in a pond, a flash of lightning. But ash moves differently. It takes its time. It rises suddenly, yes, but it falls slowly, settles gently, lingers long. And in that slowness it becomes part of everything: air, earth, memory, myth. In villages that live near volcanoes, there are songs and sayings passed down about the ash. When it comes, what it means, how to live with it. In some places, people believe ash carries the voices of the mountains. In others, it is seen as the earth weeping or cleansing or dreaming. We fear ash because we know what comes before it, the eruption, the noise, the fire. But we also honor it because we know what comes after, the rebirth, the richness, the green. Ash holds both of these truths at once. It is what the earth gives when it has spoken too loudly. And it is what the world uses to begin again, to paint fresh patterns on old ground, to layer time into the landscape. Stand still in a place where ash has fallen and you may feel it, this slow cycle of ending and beginning. Run your hand through the soft dust and it crumbles like flour, yet it is made of stone. It is sharp, but it feels soft. It came from deep within, yet rests now on the surface of the world as light as breath. That contradiction is what makes it beautiful, what makes it timeless, what makes it matter. And even though we often brush it away, off cars, off steps, off shoulders, it never truly disappears. It becomes part of the rain, the river, the root. It travels from air to land to water to life. It enters the leaves of a tree, the feather of a bird, the skin of a fruit. And in this way, the memory of eruption is not just preserved, it is lived. So when you see ash falling, or read about it in distant news, or hold a piece of volcanic rock in your hand, know that you are holding a moment the sky remembered, a breath from the earth's deepest voice, a story of pressure released, of silence falling, of life returning. Ash is not just what is left behind, it is what comes next. Beneath every step we take, beneath the roots of trees and the bones of continents, there flows a river no one sees. It is not made of water, nor does it glisten in sunlight. It glows, it moves, and it hums with heat older than the stars. This is the river of fire beneath our feet, the great molten mantle that cradles the earth's crust, lifting, shifting, melting, creating. It does not roar, it pulses, it stretches. It carries the memory of the planet's birth and the promise of its future. It is the slowest river, the hottest, the deepest, and it never stops flowing. This river begins near the Earth's core, where temperatures soar beyond anything we can touch or imagine. The pressure is immense, the rock is dense, and yet it moves. Not like waves or rapids, but like honey left in the sun. This motion is not chaos. It is order, shaped by heat rising from the core and gravity pulling from above. Together, they create convection, vast currents of semi-solid rock circulating over millions of years. These currents are the breath of the planet, cycling heat and reshaping continents. Imagine the mantle not as a single space, but as a vast, slow ocean, filled with upward surges and downward pulls. Where hot mantle rises, it pushes on the crust, stretching it, creating rifts and new seafloor. Where it cools and sinks, it drags old crust down, recycling it into the deep. This constant movement is what drives the tectonic plates, the puzzle pieces of Earth's outer shell. And as they slide, bump, and dive beneath one another, they open wounds through which the river of fire escapes. Volcanoes, mid-ocean ridges, and deep-sea vents, all are places where the mantle comes close to the surface, whispering its heat. Some parts of this river rise in narrow columns called mantle plumes. These plumes are like hot fingers reaching from the core mantle boundary to the base of the crust. When they touch the surface, they form hotspots, regions of intense volcanic activity that can create entire island chains. The Hawaiian Islands, for example, were built one by one as the Pacific Plate moved slowly over a stationary plume. Each island is a frozen step in the dance between crust and mantle, a cooled footprint of fire. But most of the river stays deep below, unseen and quiet. We know it's there not because we've seen it, but because we've listened. Seismic waves from earthquakes travel differently through molten regions than through solid rock. By measuring their speed and direction, scientists create maps of the mantle's secret flows. They've found plumes as wide as continents, and mantle anomalies that sit like sleeping giants beneath Africa and the Pacific. These discoveries remind us that the Earth's interior is not a still furnace. It is alive with structure, shape, and motion. And this motion matters. It is why continents drift, why oceans open and close, why mountains rise and fall. Every landscape we know is the surface echo of that river's slow surge. Even earthquakes, those sudden, terrifying jolts, are the crust's way of adjusting to the deeper flow beneath. We live on a floating shell, thin and cracked, riding a tide we cannot control. But that tide is what made our world. It also made the air we breathe. Billions of years ago, volcanic eruptions released gases trapped in the Earth's interior: carbon dioxide, water vapor, nitrogen. These gases formed the first atmosphere. Without the river of fire, there would be no sky, no clouds, no oceans. The same eruptions that painted the Earth with lava also filled the air with the ingredients of life. And they still do. Every time a volcano erupts, it exhales part of the deep Earth, feeding the cycles of air, water, and rock. Even the magnetic field that shields us from solar wind begins deep in the molten outer core, just beneath the mantle. The movement of liquid iron there, another river of fire, generates electric currents that create Earth's magnetic shield. Without it, our atmosphere would be stripped away, and the sun would burn us bare. So the fire below protects us, not just from within, but from above. And yet, for all its power, this river is not chaotic. It is not wild. It is patient. It works on timescales far beyond our own. A single convection cycle might take 200 million years. The mantle flows slowly enough that continents seem still to us, but given enough time, it moves mountains, literally. India was once part of the southern supercontinent Gondwana. It drifted north on a slab of mantle and collided with Asia, pushing up the Himalayas. That journey took tens of millions of years, and it was guided every inch by the fire below. We are small compared to such forces, yet we are shaped by them in every way. Our climate, our coastlines, our history of life, all are tied to the quiet churn of heat and rock beneath. We build our homes on land raised by that heat. We drink water stored in rock fractured by its movement. We mine minerals crystallized in its flow. And sometimes we pause to wonder at the mountains and valleys and volcanoes it has made. So the next time you look at a landscape, at a mountain range or an island or a fault line, remember what lies beneath. Not just stone, but motion. Not just pressure, but purpose. A river of fire, ancient and unending, shaping the world not with flame, but with patience. It moves still beneath your feet. You cannot feel it, but you are riding it. Let's sink deeper now into that slow-moving tide beneath us, the river of fire that has shaped continents, raised mountains, and stitched the planet's crust together again and again. While it flows too deep to see, its story unfolds in every pebble and cliff we touch. Because the fire below is not just a force, it's a process. A process that makes and remakes the earth, not through sudden fury, but through long, quiet motion. It is this quiet that we must learn to hear, this motion we must learn to read, if we want to understand the planet beneath our feet. The mantle's movement doesn't ripple like water. It bends and folds and stretches. Rock becomes pliable under pressure and heat, soft enough to curve like dough yet strong enough to support the continents above it. As it flows, it carries heat outward, recycling material that once sat at the base of the crust, lifting it upward to form new land. Oceanic ridges, like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, are cracks in the Earth's skin where this molten mantle spills out. There, magma cools into basalt, forming new seafloor with every gentle rise. It's not a catastrophe, it's a birth. This process is called seafloor spreading, and it's happening right now quietly beneath the oceans. As magma rises and solidifies, it pushes older crust away from the ridge, causing tectonic plates to drift apart. Over millions of years, this movement reshapes entire ocean basins. It draws continents together or pulls them apart. The Atlantic Ocean, for instance, is growing wider each year, even if only by the width of a fingernail. But across time, those tiny movements build vast new worlds. Far from these ridges, where one plate dives beneath another, the mantle's river sinks instead of rises. This happens at subduction zones, places where the oceanic crust is forced down into the earth. As it descends, it melts again, becoming part of the river it once emerged from. And so the loop continues. Crust becomes magma, magma becomes crust. It is a perfect cycle, one that never hurries, never rests. Each piece of the earth is born more than once. Each stone is a traveler in time. This motion is more than mechanical. It's also chemical. As the mantle flows, it mixes and stirs its materials, changing their composition. Some regions become rich in iron and magnesium. Others collect lighter elements like silicon and oxygen. These variations create different kinds of magma, each with its own personality, some thick and explosive, others thin and quiet. What kind of rock forms depends on where the magma comes from and how long it takes to cool. That's why basalt from an ocean ridge looks different than granite from deep within a mountain. Both came from the same river, but they took different paths. And then there are the places where the fire does more than shape land. It shapes life. At hydrothermal vents deep beneath the sea, the mantle's heat warms water that seeps through the ocean floor. This superheated water erupts in black clouds, rich with minerals. And around these vents, life thrives, strange, glowing creatures that feed not on sunlight but on chemicals from the Earth's breath. Giant tube worms, blind shrimp, microbes that break down sulfur. These ecosystems, hidden in the dark, are reminders that life does not always need the sky. Sometimes, it needs only warmth and time. Scientists now believe that life on Earth may have begun in such places, cradled by the heat of the mantle, nurtured by the nutrients it brought up. The river of fire, then, may not only have shaped the surface of our world, it may have sparked the first flicker of life itself, and it continues to support that life, silently, invisibly. The continents we live on float on its strength. The air we breathe was exhaled by its volcanoes. The water we drink may have first touched hot rock, before finding its way into rivers and clouds. Yet for all its gifts, the mantle's movement is not always gentle. Sometimes it builds too much pressure. Sometimes a plume pushes too far, too fast. When that happens, the crust can break, releasing sudden bursts of energy in earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. But even these events, dramatic as they seem, are moments in a much longer process. The mantle does not erupt to destroy, it erupts to reset, to release, to begin again. A volcano is not just a danger. It is a vent, a wound, a breath, and it is part of the river's rhythm. Over time, this rhythm has created everything we see. The Alps were lifted by colliding plates guided by mantle flow. The Great Rift Valley in Africa was opened by a plume stretching the crust above. Even the tiny islands that dot the Pacific, some no bigger than a town, stand because the river of fire found a path to the surface and left behind a mark. These marks become homes, nations, stories, but their roots are deep, unseen, and always moving. In this way, we are not just living on the earth, we are living within a current. The heat beneath us is ancient, but it is not spent. It continues to rise and fall, to stir and cycle, to remake what came before. The rocks we touch today will one day melt and rise again. The ground we walk on will drift. The world we know is not fixed. It is flowing like the river beneath our feet. So when we speak of stability, of permanence, of foundations that never shift, we must remember, even the most solid stone began as movement. Even the most distant peak was once deep below. And even the quietest ground has a story of fire beneath it, waiting, flowing, shaping all things in time. Now we come to the quiet surface of this long, flowing story, a story that began deep within the earth and moved upward inch by inch through fire and time. The river of fire beneath our feet is not something we can touch, not something we can see. Yet it shapes the ground we walk on, the skies above us, even the lives we lead. It is a force so slow, so steady, that we often forget it is moving at all. But it is. And in that motion lies the secret of our planet's breath. The journey of this river is not one of arrival, but of return. It melts, rises, cools, sinks, and melts again. The same atoms cycle through mantle, crust, ocean, and life, again and again, changing form but never disappearing. Every mountain you see was once buried deep in the earth's heart. Every grain of sand may have once been part of a volcano. And every drop of water that cools the surface was once drawn upward by the fire below. In this way, the river does not just flow beneath us, it flows through us. We are made from it, and one day we will return to it. Even the quietest places on earth are shaped by this movement. In the vast interiors of continents far from any volcano or fault line, the land may seem still. But deep below, the mantle moves. It presses upward to lift plateaus or drags sideways to stretch the land. Some of the Earth's oldest rocks, 3, even 4 billion years old, come from such places. These are remnants of ancient crust, once part of long-vanished supercontinents. They carry within them the patterns of past mantle flows, like fossils not of creatures, but of the planet's inner breath. Sometimes these ancient rocks are brought to the surface suddenly, as if the river below reached up with a warm hand and lifted them into light. In Canada's cratons, in Australia's shields, in Greenland's icy heart, there are stones that have not seen the mantle for eons, and yet they still tell its story. Their crystals hold clues to the chemistry of Earth's past. Their isotopes whisper of times when the mantle was hotter, faster, younger. They are, in a way, messages in a bottle from the deep. But the river of fire does not only shape land, it shapes thought. The more we learn about it, the more we understand that change is not always sudden, that transformation is often invisible, that progress may not look like motion but feels like heat building slowly beneath the surface. Our lives mirror this rhythm. We grow not in leaps but in quiet shifts. We are shaped by forces we cannot name, molded by heat we cannot see. And yet we emerge, changed, risen more than we were before. The river of fire teaches patience. It teaches resilience. It reminds us that even in stillness there is movement. Even in waiting there is purpose. Just as continents drift a few centimeters a year, so too do our ideas, our hopes, our understanding. Slowly, gently, but always forward. And even in times of upheaval, when earthquakes rattle the ground or lava spills over ridges, we can remember that these are not signs of anger. They are signs of life. The earth is not breaking. It is breathing. It is shifting, adapting, resetting. The same way trees lose their leaves in winter, the earth sheds pressure. The same way rivers flood and then retreat, the mantle flows and cools. It is not destruction. It is renewal. Volcanoes may seem like the most dramatic expression of this river's voice, but they are not the whole story. Most of the river stays hidden, faithful to its deep path. It carries on whether we notice or not, creating new seafloor, lifting mountain roots, forming the cradle of tomorrow's continents. It asks nothing in return, only that we remember where we come from. And perhaps the most humbling thought of all is this: long after we are gone, long after our buildings have fallen and our maps have changed, the river will still flow. It will still rise in plumes, still cool into crust, still sink into heat again. It will outlive us, not as a reminder of our end, but as a promise of the Earth's continuation. It has been flowing since the planet's birth, and it will keep flowing until the very last breath of this world. So when you stand on a cliff edge or walk barefoot across warm ground or feel the faint shiver of a distant quake, pause. Listen, not with ears but with wonder. Beneath your feet the earth is speaking, not in words but in warmth, not in lines but in cycles. It is telling you that the world is alive, that it flows, that it remembers. This is the river of fire, not angry, not chaotic, just eternal, and always beneath you, always becoming. Far beneath the waves, where sunlight fades and silence grows thick, there are volcanoes that no one sees. They do not breathe fire into the sky or scatter ash across cities. Instead, they hide beneath miles of water, rising from the ocean floor in slow, secret spirals of stone. These are the hidden volcanoes, the ones that build islands, change currents, shape coastlines, yet do so in the quiet dark, with only the deep sea as their witness. The ocean, vast and unknowable, keeps their hearts hidden, beating gently beneath the surface of the world. More than 75% of the Earth's volcanic activity happens underwater, not on land. While we often picture volcanoes as towering mountains with glowing craters, most of them live quietly beneath the sea. Along mid-ocean ridges, long underwater mountain chains that stretch for thousands of miles, magma rises through cracks in the oceanic crust. It spills out, not in violent explosions, but in pillow-shaped flows that cool almost instantly upon touching the freezing water. These flows pile up, layer upon layer, forming underwater mountains and ridges that grow taller with every breath from the Earth's interior. The mid-ocean ridge system is the longest mountain range on the planet, though we rarely speak of it. It wraps around the globe like a seam, a scar, a glowing thread in the fabric of the seafloor. Here, tectonic plates drift apart, making space for the river of magma to rise. In the Atlantic, the mid-Atlantic ridge runs down the center of the ocean, slowly widening the sea as lava becomes rock. In the Pacific, the East Pacific rise works even faster, churning out new seafloor at a pace too slow for our eyes, but fast enough for the planet to feel. These underwater eruptions don't send plumes of ash into the atmosphere or light up the night sky. Instead, they release bursts of heat and minerals that reshape the ocean's chemistry. As magma cools, it cracks the rock around it, and cold seawater seeps into these cracks. Deep inside, the water is superheated by surrounding magma and rushes back out through hydrothermal vents, carrying with it a rich mix of dissolved metals: iron, copper, zinc, sulfur. When this mineral-rich water hits the cold sea, it forms tall, chimney-like structures called black smokers, which puff out dark clouds into the deep. Around these vents, life blooms in complete darkness. In a place with no sunlight, where pressure would crush most creatures, ecosystems thrive. Tube worms, giant clams, bacteria that feed on sulfur, all find shelter and nourishment in these volcanic gardens. These creatures do not rely on photosynthesis but on chemosynthesis, a process where energy is drawn from chemical reactions rather than the sun. This was once thought impossible. But here in the black hush of the ocean, the volcano's hidden heart feeds life with warmth, minerals, and time. Sometimes, the sea itself hides more dramatic changes. In places where underwater volcanoes grow tall enough, they breach the surface and become islands. The Hawaiian archipelago is one such gift from the deep. Each island was born from a hotspot, a plume of rising magma that broke through the oceanic crust and piled lava until it broke the waves. The big island of Hawaii is still growing, fed by Kilauea and Mauna Loa, two of the most active volcanoes on Earth. Even as they erupt above water, their roots reach deep into the sea, anchored in the hidden furnace below. But many volcanoes never make it to the surface. They remain seamounts, submerged mountains that rise thousands of feet from the ocean floor but fall short of the light. Some of these are extinct, cooled and quiet for millions of years. Others are active, releasing heat in ways we're only beginning to detect. Through satellite measurements, sonar mapping, and remote submersibles, scientists are slowly revealing this undersea fire. They've found more than 100,000 seamounts across the globe, and suspect there may be hundreds of thousands more. The ocean hides these volcanoes well. Its depth muffles their sounds. Its currents wash away their clues. Even large eruptions can go unnoticed, detected only by subtle changes in water temperature, acoustic tremors, or satellite observations of discolored plumes in the sea. But the Earth always leaves signs. Floating pumice, warmed water columns, strange patterns of dying fish, each a whisper from a volcano beneath the waves. One such whisper was heard in 2012, when a massive underwater eruption occurred near Tonga. It built an entirely new island overnight, first a black ridge breaking the surface, then a dome of steaming rock, and finally a thin stretch of land connecting two older islands. It lasted only a few years before erosion wore it away again. But for a time, it reminded us that the ocean's surface is not still. It is skin stretched over motion. Beneath it, the volcanoes are always building, always waiting. The ocean's role in hiding these volcanoes is both a veil and a protection. It prevents ash from reaching the sky, blocks lava from spreading far, and quenches fire before it grows wild. But it also makes study difficult. The pressure is immense, the darkness complete, the terrain treacherous. Only in recent decades have we begun to see clearly what lies below. And even now, most of the ocean floor remains unmapped, its volcanic secrets held in salt and shadow. Still, we keep listening. Submarines equipped with cameras, robotic arms, and temperature sensors explore the ridges and vents. They collect samples of fresh lava, measure gases, and study the creatures that call this world home. With each dive, we learn more about how the planet works, not just on the surface, but in its deep, hidden heart. And we begin to understand that the ocean is not just water above rock. It is water upon fire, forever balanced. So the next time you stand on a beach or watch waves crash against cliffs, remember what lies beyond the horizon, far beneath the blue. There in darkness, the earth is making new land. There in silence, volcanoes are shaping the world. And the ocean, vast and shimmering, is keeping their hearts hidden until the time is right. Let us drift deeper now, into the quiet valleys of the seafloor where light cannot reach and time moves like water through stone. Here, in the coldest, darkest corners of the world, the ocean hides its volcanoes not just in depth, but in silence. These are not the roaring peaks we know from land, but slow-building giants, layered in basalt and mystery. They do not burst into view. They rise quietly, fed by magma that pulses through the planet's veins like a heartbeat buried in salt. The ocean floor is not flat. It is sculpted by volcanoes, some young, some ancient, all shaped by the slow, unstoppable movement of tectonic plates. As these plates pull apart, magma seeps upward, cools instantly in the freezing water, and forms new crust. This is the most consistent creation on Earth. Every second, new seafloor is being born. We do not feel it, we do not hear it. But the planet grows beneath the waves, grain by grain, layer by layer, with the calm persistence of breath. Mid-ocean ridges are where this story is most alive. Picture a jagged scar running across the floor of every ocean, splitting continents apart and feeding the world with fresh rock. These ridges are volcanoes in motion, not single peaks but entire chains, thousands of miles long. They are the true birthplaces of continents. The crust you stand on today may have been born here millions of years ago, emerging from the sea, riding a plate slowly toward land until it surfaced as mountain or plain. In this way, the ocean hides more than fire. It hides the origins of home. But there is more than lava down here. There is life, rich, strange, unimaginable life. Around hydrothermal vents, where magma heats seawater to boiling, entire ecosystems bloom without sunlight. Bacteria feed on minerals in the vent fluid, converting chemical energy into nourishment. Around them grow fields of giant tube worms, waving gently in the current, their blood-red plumes absorbing oxygen and sulfides. White crabs scuttle across black chimneys. Fish with translucent skin glide silently above. These creatures are ancient and new all at once, descendants of the Earth's earliest life forms, thriving in conditions we once thought unlivable. In these volcanic gardens, evolution writes with a different ink. There are no leaves, no roots, no chlorophyll. Life here has learned another way. It builds on metal. It breathes through stone. It survives in heat that would scald most beings and in pressure that would crush them. Scientists believe these vent communities are some of the oldest ecosystems on Earth. And perhaps in the hidden oceans of moons like Europa or Enceladus, such volcanic warmth might harbor life again. The ocean hides not just our own volcanoes, but the possibility of life beyond. When underwater volcanoes erupt, the sea reacts in quiet ways. The sudden release of heat may cause columns of water to rise hundreds of meters, detectable by sensitive satellites. Bubbles of gas, carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, methane, escape into the sea, altering its chemistry. Fish flee. Plankton bloom. Sometimes the eruption builds a cone so tall it reaches the surface, forming an island in days. Other times, it collapses into a caldera, leaving behind a deep crater filled with superheated water and gases. These events reshape the sea's floor and its life, often without a single human seeing it happen. To understand these hidden events, scientists deploy tools as quiet as the volcanoes themselves. Autonomous underwater vehicles drift through the dark, mapping terrain with sonar. Pressure sensors on the seabed feel the faint quivers of eruptions. Buoys floating on the surface gather data on water temperature, gas concentrations, and rising ash plumes. Each tool sends back pieces of a puzzle, and over time a picture forms, not of explosions but of growth, not of disaster but of change. Some of the most surprising discoveries have come from places long assumed extinct. Dormant seamounts once thought lifeless have been found venting warm fluids, their sides teeming with corals and sponges. These corals are ancient, some hundreds of years old, slowly building reefs on slopes of basalt and lava. They are delicate but strong, drawing life to them in the middle of nowhere. In their branching arms, crabs shelter, fish dart, and sea stars cling. These deep-sea oases are built on cooled fire, and they flourish in the calm after heat. The ocean is a master of concealment. Its waves mask the tallest underwater peaks. Its pressure buries the sound of eruptions. Its darkness hides the glow of molten rock. But still, the volcanoes continue. They do not need to be seen to matter. They build quietly, patiently, feeding life, shaping coasts, forming islands that one day will hold trees, birds, and maybe even people. We often think of volcanoes as things that explode, but in the deep they are things that grow. Every pillow lava flow adds weight to the seabed. Every quiet vent adds minerals to the water. Every crack filled with magma becomes a ridge, a trench, a future mountain. These changes are slow, but they last. They are not only shaping the ocean, they are shaping time. And in all of this, the ocean remains both partner and protector. It softens eruptions, cools lava, spreads minerals, and provides cover for life to begin again. Without it, these volcanoes would be too violent, too exposed. But with it, they become quiet creators. The ocean's darkness is not a void, it is a cradle. So the next time you look at the sea and think of it as empty, remember what it carries below. Not just fish and currents, but fire. Not just silence, but birth. The ocean does not roar with its volcanoes. It sings softly, in bubbles and heat, in stone and salt. And it keeps those songs safe in its deepest folds. Let us return now to the quiet surface of the sea, knowing what lies below, knowing that beneath each ripple, beneath each swell, the earth is always changing. The ocean may seem endless and still, but it carries the breath of fire in its depths. The hidden volcanoes beneath it are not asleep. They are simply patient. They are builders, not destroyers. And in their silent labor, they shape more than just the seafloor. They shape the very future of land and life above. Sometimes what the ocean hides is only temporary. Over years or centuries, underwater volcanoes grow taller. They build themselves upward, one eruption at a time, until finally a peak breaks through the water's surface. When that happens, an island is born. It does not arrive with ceremony. It rises in steam and ash, in black rock and trembling waves. It may be small at first, just a dome of cooled lava, but with time and eruption it grows. These islands are new land, unclaimed by trees or birds, waiting only for wind to bring seeds and for rain to fall. Over years, life arrives. The lava wept from the sea becomes soil, and the soil becomes forest. From deep fire, green things rise. The process is fragile. Some volcanic islands last only a few years before the waves wear them away again. Others endure, forming entire archipelagos. The Galapagos Islands, Iceland, the Azores, all began as underwater volcanoes, and each carries the marks of its birth in the shape of its cliffs, in the minerals of its soil, in the heat that still lingers beneath the ground. Even long after the eruptions have stopped, the story remains in every stone. But not all islands are seen. Some volcanoes build mounds beneath the waves and never rise high enough to break the surface. These seamounts, though invisible, are no less important. They interrupt ocean currents, redirecting flows and creating upwellings that bring nutrients from the deep to the surface. In these places, life flourishes. Fish gather, whales feed, coral reefs grow in slow spirals around submerged craters. These invisible peaks become anchors of biodiversity, their unseen presence shaping entire marine ecosystems. In many ways, the ocean itself is shaped by these volcanoes. The mid-ocean ridges are like spines that hold the Earth's body together. They form the edges of tectonic plates and drive their movement. As these plates slide, collide, and spread, they trigger everything from earthquakes to mountain building to the drift of continents. Without underwater volcanoes, there would be no plate tectonics. And without plate tectonics, the Earth would be a still and silent place. Without mountains, without deep oceans, perhaps without life at all. Even the chemistry of the sea is shaped by this fire. Hydrothermal vents release iron, sulfur, and other elements into the water, elements that feed plankton, the base of the ocean's food web. These microscopic plants and animals drift with the currents, absorbing sunlight and carbon, feeding fish and whales, and eventually us. The nutrients that make their way into our crops, our food, our bodies. Many of them began in the heated heart of a volcano, hidden beneath the sea. And then there is time. Volcanoes under the sea have been building since the Earth's earliest days. Long before the continents had taken their shape, before there were forests or fish or even blue skies, there were eruptions in the ocean. Back then the atmosphere was thick with gases, the sun was dim and the land was barren. But under the waves, fire and water met. They formed minerals. They created heat. They sparked chemical reactions. Some scientists believe that this is where life began, not in a warm pond on land, but at a hydrothermal vent, where volcanic warmth gave birth to the first living cells. If that is true, then every breath we take is a gift from the ocean's hidden heart. Even today, as we map the ocean floor and explore its deepest trenches, we find reminders of this ancient story. Lava tubes stretching for miles, vast plateaus of basalt, craters the size of cities, and though we cannot see them with our eyes, satellites watch for signs. Plumes of steam rising in the middle of the sea, shifts in the seafloor, faint whispers of seismic activity. All of them signals that the ocean's volcanoes are still alive, still writing the planet's story from below. The ocean hides a volcano's heart, not to conceal it forever, but to protect it, to give it space, time, and peace to do its work. Fire needs water. Movement needs silence. Creation needs darkness. Beneath the ocean, these things come together. And what emerges is not just rock, but balance. A balance that keeps our world turning. So when you look out over the ocean and see nothing but blue, remember what lies below. Remember that the land you stand on may have started in those depths. That the wind in your lungs, the iron in your blood, the shell in your hand, all carry pieces of those unseen eruptions. The ocean may hide the volcano's heart, but its pulse is everywhere. It beats in the waves. It echoes in the currents. It glows softly in the deepest dark. And it reminds us always that the earth is not finished. It is still becoming. And it begins again and again beneath the sea. There is a thunder that does not shake the air. It rolls not through skis but through stone. It echoes not with sound but with movement. This is the soundless thunder of magma, an immense silent force that flows beneath our feet, carving paths through the earth's deep layers, pushing upward, pressing outward, reshaping the world without ever being heard. It is not noise that announces it, but change. Not volume, but pressure. Magma, in all its glowing weight, moves like thought, invisible but undeniable. Deep within the Earth's mantle, where temperatures are high enough to soften stone and pressure is strong enough to reshape continents, magma begins its journey. It forms when rock melts, not all at once but bit by bit in pockets and ribbons and waves. Sometimes it melts because pressure decreases. Sometimes because water lowers the rock's melting point. Sometimes because heat from below touches just the right place. Whatever the reason, the rock becomes soft. It begins to rise not in a rush but in a slow, steady pulse, like sap in a tree, like breath. This rising magma is thick, not like water but like honey warmed by sun. It carries gases, crystals, and ancient elements from the deep. As it moves upward, it begins to change. It cools a little. It mixes with surrounding rock. It splits into branches. Sometimes it collects in chambers where it rests for a time, years, centuries, even longer, before moving again. These chambers are like lungs within the earth. They fill, stretch, and exhale slowly, building pressure that one day may break the surface. But before that happens, before the eruption, before the lava flows, there is the thunder, not heard but felt. The ground may tremble, small earthquakes ripple out from the rising magma, cracks form deep underground, gas begins to hiss through invisible faults. Seismographs detect the motion, geophones listen to the low-frequency rumbles, and satellites measure tiny shifts in the land. These signs are subtle, a swelling hill, a faint quake, a shift in gravity. All of it is the voice of magma, speaking in pressure and pulse. It is a language of silence, and it is everywhere. Beneath volcanoes, yes, but also beneath places that have not seen eruptions in human memory. Places like Yellowstone with its vast underground reservoir of magma, or Italy's Campi Flegrei where pressure rises gently beneath villages and lakes, or Iceland where fissures stretch across the land like quiet scars, whispering of fire beneath ice. These places do not shout, they hum, and their hum is thunder slowed. Magma doesn't always reach the surface. Often it stops short. It cools underground, hardening into granite, diorite, gabbro. These intrusive rocks form the cores of mountains, the roots of ridges, the skeletons of continents. We walk on them every day without knowing. They are the thunder made still, the roar that never rose, and yet they shape the world just the same. Even when magma does erupt, the thunder remains half silent. Lava flows outward, glowing and hissing, but much of the energy is still below. Volcanic eruptions are like punctuation marks in a much longer sentence. The magma chamber that fed them may remain full or only partially emptied. Pressure may rebuild. Another eruption may come, or not for 1,000 years. All the while, the thunder continues beneath. Scientists who study magma must learn to listen differently. They watch the ground, measure gases, analyze thermal images. They drill into ancient flows to understand the chemistry of past eruptions. They run simulations of how magma moves, how it collects, how it might rise again. But still, the magma speaks in a voice too deep to hear directly. Its thunder is slow, its rhythm spread across centuries. To understand it, one must wait, must feel, must trust the shape of silence. There is something powerful in a force that does not need to shout, something humbling. In a world filled with noise, cars, machines, crowds, the magma waits beneath it all, steady and calm. It does not chase attention. It does not ask to be seen, it simply moves. And in doing so, it shapes the ground, the air, the sky. It creates the hills we climb, the minerals we mine, the heat we harness. It is the hidden hand of the earth, working in silence. And it is not just found in grand volcanoes or famous fault lines. Beneath every continent, beneath every ocean, there is magma moving. It fuels geothermal springs. It warms underground aquifers. It melts glaciers from below. It is the reason Iceland has hot showers and New Zealand has geysers. It is why some cities have steam rising from grates in winter. The magma beneath us may be distant, but its warmth touches the surface in ways we often forget. Sometimes when magma moves closer to the surface, we can feel the change even more. A lake turns green. The ground rises by centimeters. Animals flee. These are not accidents, they are responses. The world feels the magma's approach before we do. It listens. It moves. And in doing so, it reminds us that the earth is alive, not in metaphor, but in motion. So let us not forget this thunder, even though it is soundless. Let us remember that silence can carry power, that stillness can hold weight. The magma beneath us is more than fire. It is history. It is future. It is the breath of a planet in slow motion. And it continues, always rising, always shaping, always speaking through the stone. Let us go even deeper now, not into the earth, but into the stillness of its voice. The soundless thunder of magma isn't just a geological event. It is a conversation the planet is always having with itself, just beyond our hearing. It pulses beneath forests and oceans, beneath villages and valleys, beneath us always. And though it does not rise in sound waves, it moves in vibrations, in heat, in soft changes that echo through stone like distant thoughts. Magma does not ask for permission to exist. It simply flows, cradled by the deep, shaping the land above with quiet certainty. Beneath volcanoes like Mount St. Helens, Fuji, or Popocatépetl, this thunder builds in chambers, pockets of melted rock that expand as magma rises. These chambers are not vast caves, not open pools of liquid flame. They are dense zones of hot, pressurized rock, partly melted, partly solid, where crystals float and gases churn. Over time, these chambers become full of pressure, pressure that moves the rock around them, stretches faults, lifts the surface, changes the very shape of the land. These are the places where thunder sleeps, waiting for release. But not all magma moves upward with the intent to erupt. Much of it rises only partway, then cools into underground formations we later call batholiths, sills, or laccoliths. These hidden bodies of hardened magma become the hearts of future mountains. In the Sierra Nevada range of California, the granite cliffs that rise so steeply were once deep magma, hardened in the crust, later revealed by erosion. What was once thunder beneath has become stone above. The magma never spoke aloud, but it still changed the face of the world. Even in places without known volcanoes, the thunder remains. In the East African Rift, the land stretches as tectonic plates pull apart. Magma wells up into the gaps, creating lakes and hot springs, raising the ground ever so slightly. No massive eruptions, no explosive events, just slow, deliberate change. The same happens beneath Iceland, where the island grows at its center, its land fed by quiet magma rising along the mid-Atlantic ridge. Even Yellowstone, so quiet on the surface, is swollen from below. Its ground lifts by centimeters each year, not from earthquakes, but from magma breathing beneath it. This movement creates more than mountains. It creates heat. That heat warms groundwater, giving rise to geysers and hot springs. In places like Rotorua in New Zealand or the Blue Lagoon in Iceland, steam rises from the earth not as a threat but as a gift. People bathe in this heat, heal in it, harness it for electricity. Geothermal energy comes from the fire below, channeled gently, without flames, without smoke. The soundless thunder becomes warmth, becomes power, becomes light. The pressure of magma also leaves fingerprints on the Earth's skin. Long before an eruption, the ground may bulge as though the Earth were inhaling. Lakes may tilt. Roads may crack. Trees may lean ever so slightly. Scientists use GPS and radar satellites to track these deformations, tiny changes that tell of great force beneath. And from those subtle movements, we can begin to predict, to prepare, to listen. But the language of magma is complex. Sometimes it sends clear signals and nothing happens. Other times it erupts without much warning. This is part of the mystery. The soundless thunder is not a single voice. It is a choir of heat, gas, pressure, and time. Each volcano has its own way of whispering, its own rhythm of breath. Scientists study gas emissions, sulfur levels, seismic swarms, but even with all our tools, we are still learning how to listen. And sometimes that listening brings awe. In Hawaii, during the 2018 Kilauea eruption, magma moved underground for days before surfacing. The ground cracked in a quiet suburb and lava emerged slowly, flowing into roads and yards. It was not a violent explosion, but a graceful arrival, like a river remembering its course. Residents watched in silence as the earth changed its shape, not with noise but with motion. The thunder did not roar, it glowed. Even ancient cultures understood this silence. Many indigenous communities saw volcanoes as sacred, not because they exploded, but because they held power in stillness. The Maori of New Zealand speak of Riuamoko, the god of volcanoes who stirs in the womb of the earth. The Japanese revere Mount Fuji not only as a mountain, but as a spirit, a being that lives and breathes beneath. These traditions speak to a truth that science now confirms. The earth is not dead beneath. It is alive, and it speaks not with noise but with movement. And in that movement there is memory. Each flow of magma carries elements from the deep earth, uranium, thorium, potassium, that tell us the age and composition of the mantle. Each rock formed from cooled magma holds stories of temperature, pressure, and chemistry. We learn from these rocks not only where the magma went, but where it came from. Some flows trace their origins to deep plumes that rise from the core mantle boundary, untouched for billions of years. In these ancient pulses of fire, we hear echoes from the Earth's earliest days. The thunder of magma, though soundless, is never still. It teaches us that transformation is a quiet force, that the most powerful changes come not in shouts but in slow movements, that the Earth, like us, builds from the inside out. Beneath the noise of daily life, beneath the cities and oceans, there is always something stirring, something becoming, something rising. And though we cannot hear it, we are shaped by it. Every landscape we know, every mineral we touch, every island we visit is here because the magma moved. Because the earth sighed deep within and made space for something new. Now, as we return to the surface, walking gently across the cooled skin of the earth, we carry the quiet weight of what lies below. The soundless thunder of magma does not fade because we cannot hear it. It continues just as it always has, shaping the world in silence, one invisible pulse at a time. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson it offers, not how to erupt, but how to become. Not how to be loud, but how to last. Even when the volcano has gone quiet, even when the ground seems still, the magma remains. It lingers in chambers, flows slowly through fractures, rests just beneath our feet. And above it, life goes on. Forests grow. Rivers cut valleys into stone. Cities rise, but the earth remembers. It holds the warmth of magma like a memory not ready to forget. We build upon this memory. We live on it. We rely on it, often without knowing. The ground we stand on was born of fire, and it still carries fire within. Sometimes that fire stirs. Magma begins to rise just slightly, collecting gases, shifting rock. These changes might never lead to eruption, but they leave a mark. A slight uplift in the land, a new crack in a field, a spring that runs hotter than before. These are the signs. They are not shouts, they are whispers. And they tell us that the planet is always in motion. Even when we feel no shaking, no heat, the magma below continues its slow, thunderless journey. It asks for no attention. It offers only presence. In places like Naples, where Vesuvius looms, or in the Aleutian Islands, where the sea hides steaming peaks, communities live with this presence daily. Children play in the shadows of volcanoes. Farmers grow crops in ash-rich soil. People bathe in waters warmed by the deep. They do not fear the magma. They respect it. They live with it as they would live with the ocean or the wind, something greater, something older, something essential. And what about the future? What will the soundless thunder become in the years to come? Scientists are learning more with each passing day. New imaging techniques allow us to see magma chambers in 3 dimensions. Gas sensors can now detect changes in volcanic breath before the surface reacts. Artificial intelligence models track thousands of microquakes to anticipate how pressure builds. We are learning to read the quiet, to understand the silence, to listen for the kind of thunder that never needs to break the air to be felt. In this listening, we've discovered that magma doesn't just build land, it builds connection. It connects continents through the shifting of plates. It connects the past to the present through ancient flows turned to stone. It connects people through the shared presence of volcanoes, whether in legend, in science, or in lived experience. From the lava fields of Hawaii to the calderas of Indonesia to the icy peaks of Kamchatka, people have always looked to the land and known, somehow, that there is more beneath. That the world is not quiet because it is empty, but because it is full. And perhaps we too carry a kind of soundless thunder, a slow shaping force within us, the ideas that grow quietly, the patience that builds strength over time, the emotions that rise unseen until they spill into expression. Like magma, we hold pressure and warmth. We move through cycles. We erupt, we cool, we rise again. The earth teaches us that change doesn't always begin with noise. Sometimes it begins with stillness, with pressure, with heat, with waiting. So when you stand at the edge of a crater, or walk across cooled lava, or touch a stone that was once molten, pause. Listen, not with your ears, but with your imagination. The magma may not speak in sound, but it speaks in story, in shape, in shadow, in the way the land bends and lifts, in the way the air smells faintly of sulfur, in the way your footsteps echo more deeply in places that remember fire. The soundless thunder of magma is the heartbeat of the planet. It flows beneath continents and oceans, beneath memory and myth. It is the beginning of mountains, the engine of tectonics, the painter of new lands. It is always there, just beneath the silence, not to frighten, not to conquer, just to move, just to shape, just to be. And in its presence, we are reminded that the world is never truly still, that even silence has motion, that even what we do not hear is always becoming. The magma does not ask for applause. It does not rise for glory. It rises because that is its nature, because that is what Earth does. So as we walk away from the volcano's edge, As we return to our cities and lives, we carry that lesson with us. Beneath the noise, beneath the quiet, beneath everything, we are walking on a whisper of fire, a whisper of time. And it is still moving. In the middle of the sea, where water stretches like an endless breath and the sky meets the horizon with no edge, something begins, not with a roar, not with a crash, but with a ripple, a shift, a swelling of the deep. This is the quiet birth of an island. It does not rise in glory. It does not shout its arrival. It lifts, it simmers, it breathes until one day, from the deepest dark of the ocean, a piece of the earth touches the air, and the world gains something new. Long before the island breaks the surface, the story begins far below. Deep in the mantle, magma stirs. A plume of heat, rising from the boundary where Earth's core meets its wrapping of stone, reaches up toward the crust. It finds a weakness in the ocean floor, a place where the crust is thin, where the plates shift, or where an ancient scar runs quietly through the seabed. Through that point, magma rises like a thought forming in the dark. Not fast, not loud, but steady. It presses upward, melting rock, widening cracks, until it touches the ocean floor and begins to build. Each eruption adds a thin layer of lava. The lava cools instantly in the frigid depths, forming rounded shapes called pillow basalts, smooth, bulbous flows that stack gently upon one another like soft stones placed by an unseen hand. Layer by layer, these pillows pile up. They grow not in days, but in decades, in centuries. Between eruptions, silence. The sea swallows all sound. The only evidence of creation is warmth, the soft shimmer of superheated water, and a slow change in depth, measured by instruments more patient than eyes. As the mound grows taller, the ocean resists. Currents wear at its flanks. Waves grind the fresh rock. Storms send surges that test the young peak's shape, but still it rises. Lava keeps flowing from deep below, fed by the constant breath of the planet. Some flows slide across the flanks, cooling as they go, forming ridges and terraces. Others burst upward through vents, building cones and spires. Over time, what was once a seamount becomes something more, a volcanic mountain reaching toward the light. Then one day the surface tension breaks. A steam cloud rises. A puff of ash appears on the water. A black peak glistens in the sun, and the ocean, for all its power, must now make room. The island is born. At first it is bare, raw, jagged, a strange protrusion of black stone in a field of blue. There are no plants, no animals, no sound but the wind and waves. The lava cools and cracks. Steam vents hiss and then fade. The air smells of sulfur and salt. Birds pass overhead, curious. Some land. Seeds arrive in their feathers. A spider clings to driftwood, washing ashore. The process has begun. Slowly, this lonely outcrop becomes a home. Rain falls. Water seeps into the cracks. Minerals leach from the rock. Mosses cling to the damp surfaces. In time, lichens paint color onto stone. The first green emerges, barely visible, like a whisper on dark ground. These pioneers break down the lava, flake it into soil, and the soil welcomes more life. Insects, grasses, shrubs, eventually trees, and with the trees come birds nesting in crevices, dropping seeds, calling across the wind. What was once a fire-born mountain is now an ecosystem. The island begins to breathe. Clouds gather around its peak. Rain flows into streams. Shorelines shape into coves and beaches. Coral reefs bloom in the shallows, fed by minerals from the lava. Fish swarm in the waters, drawn by the shelter of rock. Crabs scuttle across the sand. The island, though small, becomes complete. This transformation from magma to mountain, from rock to refuge, does not happen quickly. It takes thousands of years, it takes patience, and it repeats again and again across the planet. The Hawaiian Islands, each formed by the same hotspot, tell this story in sequence. From the youngest, still growing Big Island to the oldest eroded remains in the northwest, the tale of birth, bloom, and erosion is written in stone. One island grows as another fades. The cycle continues. Other islands rise and vanish more quickly. In 2013, a new island appeared off the coast of Japan. Formed by an undersea eruption, it grew quickly, merged with an older island, and drew the eyes of the world. For a time, it was a black, steaming mass. Then it cooled. Birds came. Seeds arrived. Green began to spread, and though erosion works tirelessly to wear it away, the island continues, for now, a breath of earth risen from the sea. Every island carries within it the memory of fire, even the most lush and peaceful ones, those filled with flowers, birdsong, and clear freshwater pools, began in silence and heat. They began with magma pushing through stone, with lava meeting ocean, with ash cooling into earth. Beneath every coconut tree, beneath every beach, beneath every footstep is the quiet history of eruption. And so the island stands, not as a monument to destruction, but to becoming, not as a mark of the earth's anger, but of its creativity. It is a reminder that from the deepest dark, from the quietest places, something new can always rise. The birth of an island is not just a geological event. It is a lesson in patience, in persistence, in the soft power of change. It shows us that even surrounded by forces that resist it, water, waves, time, something new can still emerge. Something can still grow. Something can still be born quietly into the light. Let us stay on this newborn land a little longer, where the waves still speak louder than the trees and the wind is the only song. The quiet birth of an island does not end when it rises from the sea. In many ways, it only begins. For what is land without life? What is rock without the soft touch of roots, without the wingbeat of birds, without the breath of something that was not there before? This second stage of the island's story is not about eruption, but about invitation, an opening to the world, a blank page for life to write on. The earliest visitors are the ones the island does not see. Microscopic organisms arrive on droplets of salt spray floating through the air. They cling to the surface of cooling lava, slip into cracks left by steam, and begin to build invisible networks of survival. These microbes feed on minerals, turn rock into the first hints of soil, and create the scaffolding for all that follows. Without them, nothing else would come. They are the quiet gardeners of beginnings. Then come the lichens, symbiotic pairs of fungus and algae that live together as one. They etch themselves into the surface, surviving where nothing else can. Their bodies flake the rock, creating dust. That dust gathers in the crevices, mixes with wind-blown seeds, holds the first droplets of rain. Slowly, invisibly, the black stone begins to soften. It begins to welcome. The ocean plays its part too. Storms carry floating debris from distant shores, logs, leaves, bits of soil clinging to the roots of torn plants. These rafts drift for days or weeks until they strike the island's edge and spill their cargo. Sometimes these rafts carry insects, spiders, even small lizards clinging by instinct. Most do not survive, but some do, and those few begin to build something new. Winds blow seeds from far-off places, grasses, ferns, shrubs. Some fall into cracks, some land on ash-covered slopes. When the rain comes, these seeds awaken. Their roots reach downward, their stems rise upward. What was once only black and gray now shows hints of green, trembling in the breeze. Birds arrive next. Some stop to rest on the bare cliffs, others come searching for food. In time, they stay. They bring more seeds tucked into their feathers, buried in their droppings. And when those seeds grow, the island changes again. It is no longer only lava. It is leaf and limb, branch and shadow. Forests begin, not in grandeur, but in scattered shoots that multiply quietly, year after year. Where plants grow, animals follow. Crabs scuttle along the shoreline, feeding on seaweed. Beetles burrow into bark. Butterflies find flowers blooming from soil that was once molten. Over centuries, a food web develops. Each layer of life builds on the one below. Each creature carries forward the memory of those that came before. The island does not rush. Its transformation is slow, patient, forgiving. Even when storms strip its shores or eruptions bury its forests, it begins again. Fire may erase the surface, but never the potential. Life returns always, often stronger, often more diverse. The cycle of growth and renewal becomes part of the island's rhythm. Eventually, humans arrive. At first only as visitors, explorers, sailors drifting on tides and trade winds. They see the island as a dot on the horizon, a haven in the sea. Some land to gather food or water, others stay. They build shelters from palm leaves, catch fish from the reefs, plant crops in the rich volcanic soil. They bring their stories, their songs, their names. The island listens. To humans, this land may seem ancient and permanent, but the island knows better. It remembers its own beginning, the pressure that lifted it, the lava that shaped it, the silence that welcomed the first leaf. Beneath the forests, beneath the homes, the magma still sleeps. It does not threaten, it waits. Some islands rest for thousands of years, others wake again. A new eruption may build another cone beside the first. A fresh lava flow may carve a new coastline. These changes, though disruptive, are part of the island's breath. Destruction becomes creation. Loss becomes rebirth. The island is never finished. It is always becoming. This ongoing birth extends beyond the land itself. Coral reefs grow around the edges, built from the bones of tiny sea creatures. These reefs protect the shoreline, create lagoons, and provide shelter for countless species. Mangroves root in the brackish waters. Turtles nest on the beaches. The island is no longer alone. It is part of a larger ecosystem, a thread in the wide fabric of Earth's living ocean. As it matures, the island begins to shape the sky. Moist air rises from its slopes, forming clouds that gather and burst into rain. The rain feeds streams, fills aquifers, deepens soil. Trees grow taller. Animals grow more numerous. The atmosphere adjusts. The climate shifts. The presence of land changes the air itself. What was once a volcano is now a cradle of life, a maker of weather, a writer of patterns. Even after millions of years, when erosion wears the mountains down and coral builds the coastline out, the island continues to change. It may sink slowly, pulled back into the sea by the weight of time. Or it may remain, an atoll ringed by reefs, its volcanic core long vanished, remembered only in shape. But even then it is not gone. The soil it made, the life it fed, the clouds it called, all remain somewhere, scattered across the ocean, carried in the wings of birds and the currents of water. The quiet birth of an island, then, is not one moment but a long unfolding. It is not a single event but a slow becoming. From the first flicker of magma to the bloom of a flower, from a steaming peak to a shaded grove, the island's story is one of patience and presence. It does not shout to the world that it is alive. It simply lives. And in doing so, it teaches us something essential, that great change can happen slowly, that new beginnings do not need to be loud, that beauty can rise from silence, from darkness, from stone. The island does not announce itself. It simply appears, shaped by time and tide, wind and fire. And once it arrives, it stays, not as a destination but as a reminder. Even the deepest places can rise. Now let us watch the island settle into its long breath, into the gentle rhythm of being. The ocean, which once resisted its rise, now laps softly at its edges. The clouds, once curious above its barren rock, now gather with purpose, feeding trees that sway where once there was only fire. The quiet birth of an island may have begun deep below in molten silence, but its story does not end in emergence. It continues, in rustling leaves, in drifting seeds, in the stillness of night when waves speak and roots listen. By now, the island has grown familiar to the world around it. Birds no longer fly past without stopping. Turtles return year after year to lay their eggs on familiar shores. Insects hum through blooming fields of grass and fern. The island has a scent, earthy, sweet, touched by salt. It has a shape recognizable to wind and wave. It is no longer only a place, it is a presence. And yet its foundations remain the same. Beneath the soft green, beneath the soil, the lava still sleeps. Cooled into basalt, shaped into cliffs and craters, it tells a quiet history. A hill is not just a hill, it is the top of a cone, the mouth of a long-cooled vent. A valley is not just a path for rain, it is the mark of an old lava river, carved not by water but by fire. Every rock carries memory, every layer holds time. The people who live here now walk on this memory. They build homes from wood and stone, gather food from forest and reef, sing stories that rise like smoke into the sky. They know the land is young even as it grows old. They know it holds heat beneath even when the surface is cool. And in their stories, the volcano lives not as threat but as ancestor, not as destroyer but as giver. It rose, and so they live. Over generations, culture deepens. Language adapts to the shape of the island. Myths explain its birth. Ceremonies mark its rhythms. Children grow up knowing the curves of the hills, the hush of the forests, the tides pull around its coves. To them, the island is not a curiosity, it is home. And in that home, they learn what it means to live on something that came from silence, from heat, from darkness, and made light. But nothing stays unchanged. Time wears gently at the island's edges. Rains fall and carve gullies into the hillsides. Roots crack stone. Waves nibble at the shores. Coral reefs grow and die and grow again, their skeletons building white beaches from ancient skeletons. Even as the island thrives, it is also eroding. Slowly, gently. Like everything in nature, it moves toward transformation. In some places, parts of the island sink. Not suddenly, but inch by inch. The weight of its own mass presses into the sea floor. The lava cools deeper and the earth adjusts. The volcano that once rose now lowers, becomes softer, rounder, quieter still. And yet the life it birthed does not vanish. It shifts with the land. It adapts. Coconut palms lean with the changing wind. Birds nest in new hollows. Rivers find different paths to the sea. Perhaps one day the island will become an atoll, a ring of reef and sand, its volcanic heart long gone. Perhaps one day the sea will take it back entirely, leaving only submerged peaks where fish swirl and coral sways. But even then, the story will not be lost. It will live on in other islands born of the same fire, in seeds carried by wind, in tales told across oceans, in the memory of stone and the softness of leaves. Because the quiet birth of an island is never just about that island. It is about the planet's slow song of becoming. It is about patience, about what rises from the deep not to conquer but to offer. An island is a gift of time, a place where life can begin again, a reminder that something new is always possible, even after silence, even after fire. And so we leave the island not as we found it, bare and steaming, but alive, generous, and growing. It has become a part of the world, and the world has become a part of it. Clouds gather around its peaks like thoughts. Waves curl at its shores like breath. And somewhere far beneath, the mantle still stirs. There will be more islands. Others are already rising in secret, their lava pillows forming in darkness. The ocean will hide them for now, as it always does. And when they emerge, they will not ask to be noticed. They will simply rise, quietly, gently, like all great things that begin from within. The island does not remember its birth in fire. It does not remember its time beneath the sea. But the world remembers. The winds that pass over it, the birds that sing from its trees, the people that call it home. All of them carry the memory. All of them live the legacy. Because in the end, the quiet birth of an island is not about beginnings or endings. It is about becoming, about what can grow from heat and stillness, from silence and time. And that, too, is the story of the Earth.